Every so often we'll get a variation of the typical title card, which usually reflects the vibe of the episode. This one is rainy and dreary, which, yes, it rains in the episode, but it also isn't an episode with a lot of fun going on. There's a pretty serious tone throughout this one, and the card reflects that. Also, Steven doesn't touch a sword at all in this episode, so this title is lying to you. Lion is in this episode. I didn't even catch that until I started editing this. With Steven Universe being animated, it's impossible to tell whether Lonely Blade is an anime or a live-action movie. That's some Inception shit.
That's bananas!
Oh, come on, it was so obvious. He's been mopping in the background of every fight scene.
Pearl could be doing her own Bladeology analyzing type videos.
Oh, come on, this is ridiculous. Just look at their form.
You know what, I take it back. Pearl wouldn't be good at this. Nobody would want to listen to her. I try to avoid the actually type remarks in these videos for that very reason. Anyone else think it's weird how Steven touches Pearl's pearl here? Like maybe that's somewhere he shouldn't be touching? Here's a location we actually never return to in this show. You might not have noticed, but it's actually not the same as the ancient sky arena, which does appear in several episodes. Since this is the only scene we see it, this is the only chance I have to talk about it. I don't even see evidence that this is floating in the sky. This could just be fog, or it could be on top of a tall mountain or a fucking tower or something. And take a look at these pillars. There's a couple statues of gems that we'd never end up seeing, and weird writing that must be some kind of gem language. It makes me think of the runes in Fez, if any of you have played that game.
In order to give a proper demonstration, I'm going to need a sparring partner.
This show doesn't go heavy on comedy, but when it does go in, it really goes in. This is the perfect joke to do at this point in the series too, since by now viewers have gotten used to Steven's personality. Also, it goes without saying, but visual jokes hit so much harder. So Pearl physically cuts the beam of light from her gem, and this thing gains some sort of autonomy. Interesting. The light from the hologram and the light that makes up Pearl's actual body must not be that different then, since you can physically interact with both of them. Also, notice the diamond on hologram Pearl's chest. I don't have a point to make about it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't point it out. This fight choreography is the best we've had so far in this series. It's so fast and snappy and dynamic. People complain about the fight scenes in this show all being in flat arenas, but when it's animated like this, it really doesn't bother me at all. I'm really glad the last we see of Pearl's old design is her in action. There's been so much going on in this scene that I almost forgot to mention it. What is this cloud thing that Amethyst has throughout this episode? Add it to the list of weird things that only appear in Season 1.
Do you wish to battle again? Parry! Parry! Thrust! Parry! Parry! Thrust!
The way hologram Pearl talks always reminded me of something, and I could never put it into words until now. It has a low-quality voice like those battery-powered games from the 2000s, so it's just a magical holographic bop it.
Steven, you know that's not a real sword technique.
Boomerang blade! Boomerang blade! Boomerang blade!
I know it's integral to this scene, but Steven getting this obnoxious always brings it down for me. I do believe it's intentional because it's trying to lower your guard before this happens.
To thrust!
But this part of the scene has always been so well done in my eyes. You get Pearl's initial reaction and the reaction from the other gems before you actually get a look at what happened. Those few seconds before the shot with the sword actually going through Pearl's chest has new viewers' minds racing, like, did that just happen? Oh, it did, what the fuck? What's the ridge around her gem, though? Pearls are supposed to be round, the good ones anyway. But Pearl's pearl has this weird lip that keeps it from falling out of her head or something. Sorry for putting that image in your minds. And hologram Pearl staying around kind of violates the rules in my mind, but the more I consider what we've seen before, the magic does let that happen. In Arcade Mania, when the big monster was defeated, the little ones didn't disappear, so this must be following the same rules. It's hard to imagine what's powering it at this point, though.
Sometimes, if our bodies are badly damaged, we release our physical forms and retreat to our gems to regenerate.
This seems like the first moment that you could start piecing together that the gems and the monsters that they fight are actually the same thing. You don't have all the pieces as a new viewer, I sure didn't the first time I was watching, but you can see that the gems and the monsters seem to follow the same rules. Two of the stools are knocked over in this scene, and they stay like that for the whole episode. Good stool continuity this time.
Hey, if real Pearl can't be here, there's always the next best thing.
It seems kind of wrong that they let this thing keep the sword. Maybe it has some kind of death grip on it. Haha, death grip, because Pearl is dead. This is the first time they used the star wipe in the middle of an episode. It's really jarring. I'm so used to hard cuts between scenes, and the star wipe has always been for the end of an episode. We got knockoff Pikachu and Sonic, of course, but the one in the middle looks like a mix between the Prince from Katamari Damacy and Gitaru Man, a character I've never heard of until making this video.
I'm gonna do it!
Go on then.
It's incredible that Garnet let this happen, but there's no fun police to stop either of them. Being a gem is a lot of fun when you don't have Pearl in your ear telling you it's reckless.
Ugh, Steven, why are you still hanging out with that thing? It's gross.
You know what? I can kind of see it. Hologram Pearl is like a part of Pearl that was severed off, so Steven bringing it around everywhere would be kind of gross from the perspective of a gem. Appreciate these facial expressions with me. I bet whoever animated this had fun.
And stop hanging out with that thing. It's creepy.
Whoa!
That is Garnet thinking, I wonder why I did that. Me too, Garnet. I'm wondering the same thing. Every so often, this show just goes full cartoon and has something absurd, like cutting this tree with a balloon sword. If you start to think about the physics of it at all, you're wasting your time. It's a cartoon, the writers are allowed to do this sometimes. Also, from Steven and the viewer's perspective, this tree getting killed is a tragedy, but cherry trees only live around 20 years, generally, which is nothing in the grand scale of Pearl's life. Being like 10,000 years old, this tree is a flash in the pan at that scale. What is this floating ball of light? Don't tell me it's the moon. It's fucking storming. Ain't no way you're seeing the moon this clearly through a goddamn cumulonimbus.
Because I just found a copy of the 5th Lonely Blade movie!
So is it creepier for Steven to be talking to the hologram Pearl or Pearl's gem? Neither of them can truly understand what he's saying. What am I talking about? I talk to my animals all the time. I can't be criticizing this. Wait, no, I was wrong. This stool isn't knocked over in this shot, but it is later, and nothing knocked it over. Not the worst stool continuity, but it's not quite on point. I don't know what this flashback is trying to accomplish from a writing standpoint. I guess it's showing Steven's upset at Hologram Pearl for killing real Pearl, but the flashbacks barely show Hologram Pearl. This one always seemed out of place to me. This is the second of Steven's TVs that get destroyed in this series. He goes through a number of TVs, and I'll be keeping track of them. I'm not the first one to do so.
Advanced mode!
This fight is nothing compared to the one earlier in the episode. I think they used all their creative juices on that one. But the music is fantastic in this scene. It sounds so alien.
Boomerang!
Pachoo! First of all, every time I see a boomerang in a cartoon, I think of Avatar. I can't be the only one, right? Second, I fucking love this goofy boomerang animation. Slow it down and you'll see it's just a PNG that gets mirrored every frame. Interesting callback to the hidden sword in the mop from the beginning of this episode, a detail that I missed on my first watch of this episode. There's this really weird animation error here where the background moves just a little bit. Here, if I speed it up and loop it, it'll be more noticeable. Do you think Hologram Pearl was preventing Pearl from reforming? Like the energy that was being spent to project the hologram was just that little last bit that she needed to come back? Other than plot contrivance, that's the best reason I can think of for Pearl to come back right after Holo Pearl was killed. When the gems reform, they go through their previous forms really quickly, so here we get to see Pearl's design from later flashback episodes and her design from the original pilot. But we also see this design, which came from a promotional poster way before the pilot even premiered. I remember liking this episode, but coming back to it, I realize I only liked the first act. The beginning, up to Pearl getting fucking stabbed, is the best part, and I already gushed about the fight scene early on. The rest of this episode makes me think back to the episode Steven's Lion, where I complained that Steven basically stands around and waits for the climax of the episode. Nothing really interesting happens until Steven fights Holo Pearl, and that fight scene is disappointing after getting to see the one earlier. I do like this one overall. The middle is just really slow. Also, Pearl fucking dies, that's pretty noteworthy. And if you want to see the next episode a week in advance, you can subscribe to my Patreon for just a couple bucks. The link is in the description. Shoutouts to my journeyman patrons, Alex Martin, Fiore Army, Mickey B, and Scala LD. I will say if it wasn't for my patrons, I wouldn't have the motivation to do these once a week. You guys keep me going. Next episode is Lion 2, the movie, not to be confused with Steven Universe, the movie.